Hello and welcome to Triple P Paint, Play, and Parlay, your source for everything miniatures. On the paint table, play on the tabletop and PC, and plenty of great parlay between me, the Game Master, Mr. Nick, and my partner Lee. Lee, what do we have on the paint table tonight?
I'm doing Spider-Man. We're gonna do Spider-Man. It's Comic Book Sunday. We're gonna do Spider-Man. We're gonna make him look amazing. Okay, first things first. We're gonna do contrast paint. The blue and the red. Go 50-50 the contrast paint. 50% water, 50% paint. Off our brush on a paper. Hope we're all doing well this afternoon or evening, I guess it would be. Beautiful Sunday day. Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters. Very excited to paint it. Putting this contrast paint all red. So Nick so kindly put this together. And primed it.
You're welcome. All right, so let's get into it. Spider-Man, one of my favorite characters, one of your favorite characters. Let's start with the MCU. What do you think of the current what's his name? Tom Holland playing Spider-Man. What do you think of him?
I think he does a fantastic job. He does the plays the child aspect very well. Or sorry, not child, immature Spider-Man um, mentality really well.
I remember it's his first appearance in the Civil War movie, Captain America, and the first thing I thought seeing him on screen is this is a guy who is in love with playing Spider-Man.
He plays it well.
I can just tell, maybe it's he's a great actor, but I really feel that this guy, especially, Tobey Maguire, I think a little bit of a paycheck to help with his gambling addiction. But this guy seemed like the person that he just was in love with playing this character. Um, Not just the action of Spider-Man, but the quips, the humor, everything about his personality felt like the complete package, bringing it to Spider-Man.
I really do agree with you 100%. I mean, you can feel the happiness when he plays it. It's not like I'm overacting or I don't care about this. This is just not my world. I'm pretty sure he's probably a comic book fan.
And I really like him being in the Marvel universe, dealing with Tony Stark. I like the Iron Spider suit. The comics story from that is a great run of Spider-Man, getting be part of Tony Stark and what he was doing during that time, and really integrating him into the greater Marvel universe to give that real lived in, real New York, part of the world that is the signature of Marvel Comics, as opposed to DC, which I'm a great Batman fan. I love me some Justice League, and many of the classic Flash stories too. But DC's, it's got Gotham City, it's got Metropolis, which are synonymous with cities in America here. But Marvel was always to be superheroes in the world that we're in and have a very lived in feel. Was a lot of focus on kind of the little things. I just think of the classic Spider-Man eating a box of donuts upside down kind of thing, or going for a slice of pizza, falling in a dumpster in New York City, the iconicness of the bridges and the architecture of New York, and the people and the things that make New York New York really come out in Spider-Man, and have him part of the MCU, and also bringing those things together really, to me as a long-term Spider-Man fan from the comics and other media, I really thought that they really knocked it out of the park with that.
I highly agree. I mean, even um, not Tom Hardy. He plays Venom in the Venom series. He's actually a longtime Venom fan, from what I was hearing. He does that as well. He does that well as well. Um, I think getting characters or people that play the characters that know the universe, and you can feel their excitement, and it transmits really well through the or transfers really well through the camera.
So of course we're starting with the classic red of the Spider-Man. What paint are we starting with today?
Contrast paint down first. It's really thin. Got really strong opaqueness. Covers the model well. We're gonna build off of that color. I'm using Citadel fresh flesh terrors red.
And now we're thinning that down.
Yeah, it's a 50-50 blend of contrast paint and water. I'm a very large Spider-Man fan. I've always liked Spider-Man. Um, grew up where I grew up, I didn't have much money, so I didn't have a comic book collection, and there weren't many comic book stores near where I was. When I eventually got friends that could drive, my favorite series came out. Forever will be my favorite forever. Maximum Carnage. That series was my favorite.
I remember in the 80s when there was at least three and sometimes into the early 90s, four Spider Man series going on at the same time. And I had a paper route in my tweens. And I took on a second paper route actually so that I could afford the comics that I was getting. And primarily, those were the multiple Spider Man books that were out, X related books and the Batman series were primarily the drivers for that to be able to indulge in my obsession and habit for the books. Had me slinging over 100 newspapers in my bag every day to make sure I could do that. And I want to give a shout out to Mr. Boudreau. He was the first franchisee of the Dairy Queen, and him and his wife were quite generous for tips at Christmas, Easter, and my birthday. So I give a thanks and a rest in peace to those for doing that. It's a wonderful part of my childhood. I thank them and everyone else for the kind of support and being able to let a kid indulge in his superhero fantasies and trade comics and share comics with my friends at the time. My friends that were great artists back then. One of the favorites of my friend Darren back in the day was drawing Spider-Man. He was great. He was also, like you, a huge Todd McFarlane fan, as I am as well. And he would be able to do his style, John Romita Jr. style, the classic Steve Ditko style. He was a great artist, and I really enjoyed hanging out with him, playing video games, watching him draw. I'd bring comics from my collection. I'd tear through his. He had a better X-Men collection than I had, so I would be tearing through his back issues of X-Men. So shout out to him as well.
Who's your favorite X-Men? Mine's not really an X-Men. I mean, I like two X Factors. I've always been a Deadpool fan, even before the movies. And Cable, hardcore Cable fan. I like Cable. I like his approach on things. Um, I enjoy Deadpool for the whole no holds bar mentality he has. Whatever he's gonna plan is gonna happen. He has no way. There's no way no one's gonna stop him. And then if I go on X-Men, I think my favorite X-Men is, everyone likes Wolverine, but my favorite X-Man himself would probably be he's actually I don't know if he's a good guy or whatever you would call him, but Archangel.
One of my most significant comic book memories is during the Mutant Massacre, where Angel loses his wings and then later becomes the Angel of Death as a Horseman of Apocalypse, and that was one of the most significant comic book events from my youth. I remember the first time reading that and having to go show everybody, look at what they did to Angel, and that one of the classic original 5 X-Men. I'm a fan of the original 5 X-Men. But honestly, one of my favorite X-Men is Nightcrawler.
Yep.
We share heritage, Deutschlanders, and I really enjoyed when they had him go to the seminary and become a Catholic priest and like really follow his faith. I thought that was one of the most three-dimensional, well-rounded stories of a character to really get into, not just being a superhero and having powers and the kind of fighting the villain kind of things, but to really look inward into who that person was that they were trying to portray in the comics and make him conflicted and having these feelings and then actually going and doing something about it. I always was attracted to that part of him, and he was also, um, uh, because of his power set, but because of his mentality too. He's the guy that would teleport in or be next to one of the other X-Men and grab them and teleport them away from danger. And he's always looking out for his friends and teammates and putting himself above others and putting himself at risk to be able to put himself in that danger and hoping he can teleport away in time before both of them get blasted by something. And I always found the selflessness that Nightcrawler would exhibit as a very admirable characteristic.
I concur. He's a very strong character. He's a very I like his color scheme first of all. I like his aspect of how he does things. Um, and he's a lot of people say he's not a strong leader type of character, but he is a morality leader and character.
I was a big fan of the Excalibur books when they kind of branched off and went into Britain with him and Shadowcat Kitty Pryde and Captain Britain, Megan, and a few others that I'm not remembering right off the top of my head. I thought those were great books. Art Adams doing some, he's one of my favorite artists, especially like just the kind of stylization. And I also like when they do kind of the fantasy or kind of alternate reality kind of things where Nightcrawler is the swashbuckling
Yeah.
like pirate and kind of stuff too. I always like that they get to put him in a cool costume. His colors are always cool. Then to put him in kind of different costumes and bring out that part of his personality and get him in kind of different cool funny situations. I always, even though it seemed a little goofy, I always thought that was just a good break and entertaining and just fun stuff to do in comics.
I 100% agree with you. That's one aspect I really like about him. Okay, next color we are throwing on is Space Wolves Gray. A bluish gray. Contrast.
Is it very thin or very light?
And it's very light. It's a light gray, but when it you start layering it on, it'll start darkening. Because these models are really thin, like detail. They're very well detailed, but they're very small. Try to go a little thinner on the paint.
I was painting Iron Man, it felt like I was painting 40K headquarters unit in like old school sized Marines.
I I concur. It's a different scale.
I think overall the scaling is good. The sculpting and the production techniques that Atomic Mass Games is using is great. There's very few mold lines. There was a few, but overall, compared to a lot of other companies, miniature lines, the very little mold lining. Most of the attachment points for the different pieces of the model were pretty good. Although, if anyone out there is listening, you guys need to upgrade the attachment procedure for heads. I do appreciate this is one of the models that had two heads. So the head's the smallest part of the kit. So there were two heads, but it has the attachment point of a particularly shaped bump that goes into a particularly shaped recess into the body, the top of the torso there. And it always feels very iffy when doing the final glue after dry fitting, that I'm not quite sure, and a push head might be a little bit off just slightly from where it's supposed to be, because the arms and legs have a very nice slotted square pin that recesses very deeply into the torso, and I'm not sure why they don't use something similar. There is enough room, even on this small of a model. There is enough room to have an elongated pin to be recessed into the torso. I'm not sure why that isn't the standard way of attaching the head.
Yeah, I mean, I I I agree with you. There's a lot of, but I know that there's worse models out there too.
Oh, by far, this, yes, is a very superior model, very modern, very well done, in a great pose. Um, I know he's going to look great on the tabletop when we start playing. I look forward to him and Spider Friends and other versions of Spider-Man as well being available is great. I like Miles as Spider-Man. I think he's a good addition to the Spider Verse. He has a interesting look, power set, background. I found excellent. Um, Even though it was a little short, I thoroughly enjoyed the Miles focused PlayStation game that came out with the launch of the PlayStation 5. It's definitely a great addition to the first Amazing Spider-Man game for the PlayStation.
You know, I never played that game. Didn't know if it was any good or not.
Absolutely dead on web slinging and the scale of Manhattan and the stream loading of the game to be able to literally go from Battery Park all the way up to the very top of Central Park and 164th Street in the game without any loading at all is just fantastic. Um, New York is a great city, and the representation of it, and to be able to really, it's one of those. It's interesting. So I played it, and then there was a bunch of DLC that came out. So I played a bunch of DLC in a row, and I had uh, they just kind of throw you into it, and I had kind of forgotten exactly how all the tricks and little things you could do in web slinging, and it was fumbling around for a bit until I went and like refresh my memory of how it was. And when you get into the web slinging, you just feel it. And it also, I believe on the PlayStation 4 Pro and then on the PlayStation 5, there are two, and maybe there's a third, like mixed mode now, where you can have either a super high fidelity mode, or you can cut down on the fidelity and go on a frame rate mode. that locks it in at a minimum of 60 frames per second. And when you do that, you really get this great sensation of speed while web slinging that that more than compensates for a slight loss in fidelity. To have that smooth, buttery frame rate as you're web slinging, that is a great game feeling. It feels great in the hand and just visually presents itself in a way that other games just don't even come close to.
What was that last Marvel game that came out that's like a beat 'em up type of game? It kind of failed.
Oh, the Avengers game starring the Ms. Marvel nobody likes.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I played that for quite a bit. That's another Square Enix game. That's interesting. So the recent Guardians of the Galaxy game is from, I believe, the Montreal studio of Square Enix, and then I can't remember which of the studios, but it is also published by Square Enix for the Avengers game, and those are night and day different games. The Guardians of the Galaxy game, I've been playing it. I'm actually uh, excited to find some time to finish it up. I'm getting pretty close to the end, I think. And the story presentation is fantastic. There's a little bit of jank in the gameplay. But there's a lot of options of kind of turning that down with like the time event kind of stuff and other weird stuff. But it has a great story. The way you can combine the special powers of each of the Guardians of the Galaxy is really well done and flows really well in combat. It feels it's done in the way like Mass Effect would, where you could kind of give orders real quick off the wheel with them, and each of them has unique powers, and then their powers are unlocked. A couple of them are unlocked through currency that you get through the game, but then their ultimate power is unlocked by achieving certain story goals of bringing the team together or doing things with the backstory of the characters. It makes you feel like you accomplish something when getting them. And then the presentation during the battles is really unique and interesting. Each of them feels like the character and the power set that they have, and then combines with each other, and having Groot entangle guys and Rocket do a grenade barrage, and having Drax knock people away from you that are doing damage, and then Gamora's ability to dish out massive damage on the elite baddies and boss baddies is great. And then there's also a traversal power for each of them that comes in during the non-combat parts of the game. Groot can make wood tentacle bridges between certain areas. Gamora is able to use her sword to climb up a wall and stab it, and basically have like an anchor point for you to like jump up, and she'll throw you like up to high areas. Drax, of course, smashes through weakened walls, and Rocket is able to enter into maintenance hatches that are small, or different like small areas that the other characters can't meet, to go to areas. He'll hack things, open up areas for special items and different things like that to get to. So each of them not only has very unique combat abilities, they have traversal abilities throughout the exploration parts of the game that you can utilize, and you have to kind of figure out how to use some of them. Some of them are interactive too, not just kind of order them to do something, but they have an interactivity to it. So you really get a great sense of the characters in a pretty well-rounded way in what you're doing with them.
Yeah, I haven't got a chance to play any of those. They always look good though, and I've never really followed Guardians of the Galaxy universe, but the movies I enjoy.
Yeah, big fan of the movies. Not too familiar with a lot of the comics. The crossover of the original Annihilation series Read some of that and a few of the very old school 90s issues, but Cosmically, Guardians of the Galaxy, Adam Warlock, Quasar, Nova Corps, um, Kree Skull, a little bit in that because I'm a big Avengers fan. So when that crosses over to Avengers, I'm a little bit familiar with that. But that is more of the cosmic area of the Marvel Universe. That's not one of my more familiar areas. So that's one of the interesting things in the Guardians of the Galaxy that you meet Adam Warlock and you talk to the big brain from the Kree. Actually, uh, spoiler alert, you meet um, one of Star Lord's girlfriends who's a Centurion in the Kree, and you find out that you have a kid together from like 13 years ago when they hooked up during whatever war they were a part of when he first was kidnapped and brought into space, and first was a with Yondu and such like that. And you get to see a lot of the Kree interaction. There's I forget what the character's name is, but he's been uh, brainwashing a section of the Kree to this weird religion around the Infinity Gem that your daughter has. And you go also to the Nowhere that's in the comics with the Russian dog and such, and a lot of that, and many other of the kind of staples of the cosmic part of the universe that you get to see. Some of which I'm not familiar with, but they're really well done. So even if you're not familiar with them, they still present the story in a way that you can get what's going on, and you probably get a lot more kind of Easter eggy stuff out of stuff if you are familiar with it.
Do you think that they'll ever reboot Silver Surfer?
You know, I don't know what the status of Silver Surfer is in any form. What's up with Silver Surfer?
Last time I remember, I might be wrong. I mean, I was 12 or 13, rather. If I remember right, he went and took over Galactus's position.
So the last update for the Silver Surfer, reading from the Book of Knowledge here, aka Wikipedia. For the 2010s, the Silver Surfer received a sixth volume and eponymous 5-issue miniseries written by Greg Pak, debuting February 2011. He was also a core cast member in the Thanos Imperative, Annihilators, and Fear Itself, The Deep. Beginning in 2011, the Surfer began appearing regularly in The Mighty Thor and a new volume of The Defenders, both written by Matt Fraction. In March of 2014, Silver Surfer Volume 7 began as part of an all-new Marvel Now, written by Dan Slott and drawn by artist Mike Allred and colorist Laura Allred. In 2016, January, Silver Surfer Volume 8 began with a special 50th anniversary edition of March 2016. And then the final update is from 2019. A 5-part miniseries titled Silver Surfer Black was released, featuring art from Trad Moore in collaboration with writing from Donny Cates. The series is an extension of the Guardians of the Galaxy storyline, which the surfer was sucked into a black hole and ejected into unfamiliar space territory. And this run follows the surfer as he traverses the spaceways on a journey back home. One fun fact, the Silver Surfer was given the power cosmic by Galactus, and one of the other temporarily wielders of the power cosmic was none other than Aunt May.
Some water down black. We're gonna fill it with spider web. Now, ready to get some red. Just Well, that's drying. We're gonna go over to base. Is thing. Gray. Gray on. Now we're gonna grab Wildwood contrast paint. This is a dark, dark, dark brown. All right. Build up the dirty concrete type of colors right there. Thank you very much, Boomhauser. Welcome to chat. If you have any questions, comments, or anything, please feel free. Put that down, let that dry. I make a dark blue. Instead of dark, I meant light blue. So Boomhauser, are you a Spider-Man fan? Now it's time to brighten up the red. It's really dark.
In our previous stream, we went over the origins and story of Crossbones, and I believe it's only fitting that we give everyone's favorite webhead his due. The early years. In Forest Hills, Queens, New York City, Midtown School student Peter Benjamin Parker is a science whiz orphan living with his Uncle Ben and Aunt May. As depicted in Amazing Fantasy number 15 from August of 1962. He is bitten by a radioactive spider, erroneously classified as an insect in the panel, at a science exhibit and acquires the agility and proportionate strength of an arachnid. Along with heightened athletic abilities, Parker gains the ability to adhere to walls and ceilings. Through his native knack for science, he develops a gadget that lets him fire adhesive webbing of his own design through small, wrist-mounted barrels. Initially seeking to capitalize on his new abilities, Parker dons a costume and, as Spider-Man, he becomes a novelty television star. However, he blithely ignores the chance to stop a fleeing thief, and his indifference ironically catches up with him when the same criminal later robs and kills his Uncle Ben. Spider-Man tracks and subdues the killer and learns in the story's next to last caption, "With great power, there must also come great responsibility." Despite his powers, Parker struggles to help his widowed aunt pay for the rent. It's taunted by his peers, particularly football star Flash Thompson, and as Spider-Man engenders the editorial wrath of newspaper publisher J. Jonah Jameson. As he battles his enemies for the first time, Parker finds juggling his personal life and costumed adventures difficult. In time, Peter graduates from high school and enrolls at Empire State University, a fictional institution evoking the real-life Columbia University and New York University, where he meets his roommate and best friend Harry Osborn and girlfriend Gwen Stacy. And Aunt May introduces him to Mary Jane Watson. As Peter deals with Harry's drug problems and Harry's father is revealed to be Spider-Man's nemesis, the Green Goblin, Peter even attempts to give up his costumed identity for a while. Gwen Stacy's father, New York City police detective Captain George Stacy, is accidentally killed during a battle between Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 90, November 1970. In issue 121 from June of 1973, the Green Goblin throws Gwen Stacy from a tower of either the Brooklyn Bridge, as depicted in the art, or the George Washington Bridge, as it states in the text. She dies during Spider-Man's rescue attempt. A note on the letters page of issue 125 states, "It saddens us to say that the whiplash effect she underwent when Spidey's webbing stopped her so suddenly was, in fact, what killed her." The following issue, the Green Goblin appears to kill himself accidentally in the ensuing battle with Spider-Man. Working through this grief, Parker eventually develops tentative feelings towards Mary Jane Watson, and the two become confidants rather than lovers. A romantic relationship eventually develops, with Parker proposing to her in issue 182 from July of 1978, and being turned down an issue later. Parker went on to graduate from college in issue 185 and becomes involved with shy Deborah Whitman and the extroverted, flirtatious, costumed thief Felicia Hardy, aka the Black Cat, whom he meets in issue 194. From 1984 to 1988, Spider-Man wore a black costume with a white spider design on his chest. The new costume originated in the Secret Wars miniseries on an alien planet where Spider-Man participates in a battle between Earth's major superheroes and supervillains. He continues wearing the costume when he returns, starting in Amazing Spider-Man 252. The change to a long-standing character's design met with controversy, with many hardcore fans decrying it as tantamount to sacrilege. Spider-Man's traditional red and blue costume was iconic, they argued, on par with those of his rivals Superman and Batman at DC Comics. The creators then revealed the costume was an alien symbiote which Spider-Man was able to reject after a difficult struggle, though the symbiote returns several times as Venom for revenge. Parker proposes to Watson in Amazing Spider-Man 290 in July of 1987, which she finally accepts 2 issues later, with the wedding taking place in Spider-Man Annual number 21 from 1987. Promoted with the real-life mock wedding using actors at Shea Stadium, with Stan Lee officiating. On June 5th, 1987, David Michelini, who scripted based on a pilot written by editor-in-chief of then Jim Shooter, said in 2007, "I didn't think they actually should have gotten married. I had actually planned another version, one that wasn't used." Parker published a book of Spider-Man photographs called Webs and returned to his Empire State University graduate studies in biochemistry in issue 310, 1988. In the controversial 1990s storyline, The Clone Saga, a clone of Parker created in the 1970s comic by insane scientist Miles Warren, aka the Jackal, returns to New York City upon hearing of Aunt May's health worsening. The clone had lived incognito as Ben Reilly, but now assumes the superhero guise of the Scarlet Spider and allies with Parker. To the surprise of both, new tests indicate Riley is the original Parker and Peter is the clone. Complicating matters, Watson announces in the Spectacular Spider-Man 220, January 1995, that she is pregnant with Parker's baby. Later, however, a resurrected Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, has Watson poisoned during premature labor and causing the death of her and Parker's unborn daughter. The Green Goblin had switched the results of the clone test in an attempt to destroy Parker's life by making him believe himself to be a clone. Riley is killed while saving Parker in Peter Parker, Spider-Man number 75, December 1996, and his body immediately crumbles to dust, confirming Riley was the clone. In issue 97 of the same series, Parker learns his Aunt May was kidnapped by Norman Osborn, and her apparent death in Amazing Spider-Man 400 had been a hoax. Shortly afterward, in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, number 13, from January of 2000, Watson is apparently killed in an airplane explosion. She turns up alive and well later in issue number 28, but she and Peter became separated in the following issue. Creator J. Michael Straczynski of the best sci-fi series to ever been made, that is Babylon 5, began writing The Amazing Spider-Man, illustrated by John Romita Jr., beginning with Volume 2, Issue 30 in June of 2001. 2 issues later, Parker, now employed as a teacher at his old high school, meets the enigmatic Ezekiel, who possesses similar spider powers and suggests Parker, having gained such abilities, might not have been a fluke, that Parker has a connection to a totemic spider spirit. Aunt May discovers her nephew, Parker, is Spider-Man, leading to new openness in their relationship. Parker and Watson reconcile later in issue number 50 of April 2003, and in issue 512, returning back to the original numbering of the series, Parker learns his late girlfriend, Gwen Stacy, had 2 children with Norman Osborn. He joins the superhero team, the New Avengers and New Avengers number 1, after their respective homes are destroyed by a deranged, superpowered former high school classmate. Parker, Watson, and May move into Stark Tower, and Parker begins working as Tony Stark's assistant while again freelancing for the Daily Bugle and continuing his teaching. In the 12-part 2005 story arc, Other, Parker undergoes a transformation that evolves his powers. In Civil War number 2, June 2006, part of the company-wide crossover arc of that title, the U.S. government's Superhuman Registration Act leads Spider-Man to reveal his true identity to the public. A growing unease about the Registration Act prompts him to escape with May and Watson and join the anti-registration underground. In issue 537, December 2006, May is critically wounded by Sniper hired by Wilson Fisk and enters into a coma. Parker, desperate to save her, exhausts all possibilities and makes a pact with the demon lord Mephisto, who saves May's life in exchange for Parker and Watson agreeing to have their marriage and all memory of it disappear. In this changed reality, Spider-Man's identity is secret once again. And in issue 455, January of 2008, Watson returns and is cold towards Spider-Man. That controversial storyline, One More Day, rolled back much of the fictional continuity at the behest of editor-in-chief Joe Quesada, who said Peter being single is an intrinsic part of the very foundation of the world of Spider-Man. It caused an unusual public friction between Quesada and writer Straczynski, who told Joe that I was going to take my name off the last 2 issues of the story arc, but was talked out of doing so. At issue with Straczynski's climax to the arc, Quesada said it was that we didn't receive the story and methodology to the resolution that we were expecting. What made that very problematic is that we had 4 writers and artists well underway on the sequel arc, Brand New Day, that were expecting and needed One More Day to end in the way we all had agreed it would. In fact, that we had to ask for the story to move back to its original intent understandably made Joe upset and caused some major delays and page increases in the series. Also, the science that Joe was going to apply to the retcon of the marriage would have made over 30 years of Spider-Man books worthless because they never would have happened. It would have reset way too many things outside of the Spider-Man titles. We just couldn't go there. In this new continuity, designated to have very limited repercussions throughout the remainder of the Marvel Universe, Parker returns to work at the Daily Bugle, which had been renamed The DB under a new publisher. He soon switches to the alternative press paper, The Frontline. J. Jonah Jameson becomes the mayor of New York in issue 591, June 2008. Jameson's estranged father, J. Jonah Jameson Sr., marries Aunt May in issue 600. During the Secret Invasion storyline, where shape-shifting extraterrestrials, the Skulls, Norman Osborn shoots and kills the Skrull Queen Varanki. He leverages this widely publicized success, positioning himself as the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D.-like paramilitary force named Hammer, and to do so to advance his agenda while using his public image to start his own Dark Avengers. Norman himself leads the Dark Avengers, guised as the Iron Patriot, a suit of armor fashioned by himself after Iron Man's armor with Captain America's colors. Harry is approached by Norman with the offer of a job within the Dark Avengers. It is later revealed that it is a ruse to coerce Harry into taking the American Son armor, whom Norman had planned to kill, in order to increase public sympathy. When Harry has the option of killing Norman, Spider-Man says to decapitate him, since Norman's healing factor may repair the blow to the head. Spider-Man also cautions Harry that killing Norman will cause Harry to become the son that Norman always wanted. Harry instead backs down and turns away from his father forever. Siege series. At Loki's suggestion, Norman Osborn creates a rationale to invade Asgard, claiming the world poses a national security threat. During a pitched battle with several superheroes, Osborn fights with the recently resurrected Steve Rogers. However, Iron Man removes Osborn's Iron Patriot armor remotely, revealing Osborn used green face paint to create a goblin-like look. Osborn screams that the Avengers do not know what they have done, only for Spider-Man to knock him down. He ends up incarcerated in the Raft Penitentiary, blaming his goblin alter ego for ruining his chance to protect the world. In the big time storyline taking place after Siege, Mary Jane invites Peter over so the two of them could gain closure over the marriage that did not happen and the breakup. Later, a massive war ensued between Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man to get Lily Hollister and Osborn's son, in which Spider-Man found that the child was actually Harry's, who later leaves town to raise him. Spider-Man assisted the Avengers in defeating Dr. Octopus's army of Macro-Octobots. He then faced a new Hobgoblin and the Kingpin, but days later he lamentably lost Marla Jameson in a fight between Alistair Alfondo Smythe's Spider Slayers. In the Spider Island storyline, after helping Anti-Venom Eddie Brock reveal Mr. Negative's true identity, the Queen was revealed to be the true mastermind. She wanted to turn the whole human race into spiders. Mr. Fantastic created a cure using the anti-venom symbiote, which Peter's clone, Kane, accidentally cured from his mutations, turning him into a perfect clone. While he and the Avengers battled the Spider Queen in Central Park, Kane killed her, and Peter managed to get the cure to every citizen via Dr. Octopus's Octobots. He met with Jay and May while they were leaving for Boston. Because he revealed he had spider powers, Peter's psychic blind spot was weakened, letting Charlie Cooper to know that he was Spider-Man, causing Peter to be single once again. Peter gives a last cure sample to Mary Jane, who briefly attempted to keep some spider powers, and then took Empire State Building, lit in blue and in his honor. In the middle of the fight in the series Superior Spider-Man, Spider-Man was unsuspectingly pinched by one of Dr. Octopus's Octobots, programmed to swap consciousnesses between the two, causing Peter to become trapped in the dying body of his foe, while Dr. Octopus claimed Peter's life for himself. In an attempt to take back his life with the little time he had left, Peter broke out of Octopus's cell in the raft, leading to a final confrontation between the two in Avengers Tower. Though Peter failed to reverse the change, he managed to establish a weak link with Otto's mind using an Octobot. In his final moments, Peter forced Otto Octavius to relive all of his memories. Having experienced in a flash all of Peter's trials and tribulation, Otto learned his lesson of power and responsibility, and swore to carry on with Peter's life with dignity as the superior Spider-Man. A portion of Peter survived in his original body in the form of subconsciousness. Though Otto attempted to rid himself of this remnant of Peter, he decided to seek its help sometime later after being overwhelmed by the return of Green Goblin and his Goblin Nation. Realizing he had failed in his role as the superior Spider-Man, having pushed his allies aside and lost his resources in the process, Otto willingly allowed Peter to reclaim his body in order to defeat Osborn once and for all and save Maria Anna Marconi, Otto's love, in the aftermath of Otto's possession of his body. Peter began to amend the relationships damaged by Otto's arrogance and negligence, both as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He additionally took up the reins of Parker Industries, a small company founded by Otto after leaving Horizon Labs. All new Marvel now. While adjusting to his new status quo, especially his position as CEO of his very own company, Peter learned a second person had been bit by the radioactive spider, named Cindy Moon. Spider-Man tracked her down and freed her from a bunker owned by the late Ezekiel Sims, where Cindy had spent over a decade in voluntary confinement shortly after getting her powers, in order to avoid drawing Morland's attention. While Peter notified Cindy that Morland was dead, he had in fact survived his last encounter against Spider-Man. Not long after rescuing Cindy, who went on to adopt her own superhero identity as Silk, Spider-Man was approached by a contingent of spider people from all over the multiverse that banded together to fight the Inheritors, a group of psychic vampires in the family of Morland that had begun to hunt down the spider totems of other realities. During a mission to gather more recruits from AD 2099, the Spider Army stumbled upon another party of spider people led by Otto Octavius, or rather a version of him from the recent past who had been plucked out of time. With the help of Spider-Woman, who had previously infiltrated the Inheritors' base on Earth 001, the Spider Army learned of a prophecy in which the Inheritors planned to sacrifice 3 key spiders: the Other, the Bride, and the Scion. These individuals were Kane, Moon, and Benjamin Benji Parker of Earth 982, respectively. With the help of even more recruits from other realities and even a deviant inheritor named Karn, the Spider Army, including a version of Gwen Stacy with spider powers known as, quote, Spider-Gwen, launched one final attack on the Inheritors of Earth 001. The ritual was stopped, and the Inheritors were exiled with no means to return home to the radioactive wasteland that had become Earth 3145. With the Inheritors neutralized, most of the spider totems were sent home. All new, all different Marvel. Following the revival of the multiverse, Octavius secretly created a digital backup of his mind that ended up inhabiting the metallic body of Parker Industries' robot assistant, the Living Brain. Octavius routinely hacked into the systems of the market share to manipulate its numbers in favor of Parker Industries. As a consequence of this, the company managed to expand into a global conglomerate with numerous bases in different countries, with the company's trademark invention being a mobile device called the Webware. By 8 months after the revival, Spider-Man officially became the mascot of Parker Industries under the guise of being Peter's bodyguard. Peter discovered New You as a front of operations for the Jackal, who claimed to have found a way to bring people back from the dead using cloning technology. In the turn of events, the Jackal was revealed to be Ben Reilly, who had been brought to life by the original Jackal before taking his place. The Jackal's plan eventually fell apart following the triggering of cellular decay in the clones created by New You, which led to the release of the carrion virus worldwide. Fresh start. After the events of Go Down Swinging, Peter's life was plagued with problems on both sides. Spider-Man, Mayor Fisk publicly supported him, condemning all other vigilantes in order to isolate him from his superhero peers. As Peter Parker, his academic credentials were revoked after being accused of plagiarizing his doctoral dissertation from Octavius, resulting in his firing from the Daily Bugle. On the other hand, Peter became romantically involved again with Mary Jane. For a brief time, Peter Parker and Spider-Man were split into separate beings due to an accident involving the reverse-engineered isotope genome accelerator. However, the separation split Peter down the middle, so both individuals did not share Peter's sense of responsibility, resulting in a reckless and vain Spider-Man. Peter eventually managed to reverse the process and merge his two halves back together before the side effects could worsen and result in their death. Later, Spider-Man becomes plagued by visions of a mysterious villain known as Kindred, who has seemingly been working with Mysterio. As this happened, the villains Black Ant and the Taskmaster captured animal-themed villains for Kraven the Hunter as part of a plan to destroy unworthy hunters. Spider-Man was tasked with fighting Kraven the Hunter, whose ultimate goal through the hunt was to anger Spider-Man and lead him to kill him, ending his curse. After Spider-Man refused and Dr. Connors saved his child Billy, Kraven lifted the force fields from Central Park, allowing Spider-Man, Connors, Billy, and the Black Cat to escape while the Avengers rounded up all the loose criminals. Last remains. Kindred uses the resurrected Sin Eater's sins to create constructs that attack the ship Spider-Man is on underwater with Miles Morales, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Woman, Anya Corazon, and Julia Carpenter. The sins possess the other spider heroes, and they attack Spider-Man, with Doctor Strange managing to hold down a demon-possessed Silk. Spider-Man admits that the Sin Eater isn't controlling his friends, but Kindred is. Spider-Man tells Doctor Strange that he will take on Kindred, but needs Doctor Strange's help, since demon possession is not what Spider-Man is used to fighting. Doctor Strange agrees to Spider-Man's offer and gives him the hand of Ashanti. Finally, encountering Kindred, Peter identifies the loved ones who died in his life morbidly arranged in attendance, provoking him to attack Kindred for his desecration of their remains. Peter frantically cries that Kindred stop what he's doing to them and kill him in place of their suffering. Owing to his end of the deal, Kindred then snaps Peter's neck, stating that they will go and face the truth together. During the time Peter was dead, Peter's consciousness remembered the fateful day of the start of one more day. Kindred accepts to resurrect Peter. And that brings us to the present.
Convoluted. I've missed a lot in Spider-Man, apparently.
I believe the last story I'm familiar with is the Spider Island thing. Or the Superior Spider-Man. I remember the swap between him and Dr. Ock. It's actually kind of interesting, if, of course, very convoluted.
Yeah. A lot of clone stuff going on. Oh, we're closing up on an hour, or hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. And we're done. Take the clothes off. There you go, Mr. Producer.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man. That's a great looking webhead right there.
I'll probably go back in later on with some dark blue wash and fill in the cracks. That's that. What do you think, Boomhauser? Still in here or not?
We'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our first broadcast of Sunday Comics. Thank you, Lee, for painting a fantastic looking Spider-Man.
Got it.
Thank you for joining us here on Triple P. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe either on our live stream on Twitch or on YouTube. You can also find us over on Twitter, Getter, Twitter, Parler, all of the itters, anywhere that you can find us. Instagram, you can see our work in various forms there, being posted daily. And if you like what you saw, please smash that like button and let us know. Please subscribe. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, or constructive criticism, we're all ears. We are a new work in progress channel, bringing you various aspects of all things miniatures. Any help that you can have for us, we would greatly appreciate it. This is the Game Master, Mr. Nick. That is the Paint Master, Lee. And until tomorrow, good night.
Good night.